source all of these amazing speakers. Just to begin with, I will go through a few ground rules. So for the panelists, do feel free to unmute yourselves. If you have any contributions you'd like to make, just speak out. For the attendees, if you have any questions, do use the Q&A button at any point, and we're going to get through to your questions at the end. In terms of the Tentacle Zone, I just wanted to introduce ourselves. So we are a we're a community-centric initiative that was started by Pillow Studios. Since 2016, we have been helping indie game developers with shared space at events like EGX and Insomnia. We've helped about 200 games exhibit so far, but then a couple of years ago, the whole Tentacle Zone has expanded into what's now known as the Tentacle Zone Workspace. Basically, it's a co-working space where like-minded independent game developers and people from the games industry come together and share technical know-how and network. And now we're working on, ever since I joined the studio as well, we've been working on a program to support our resident developers and work on other public events to generally support independent game developers, like this event here, which is why we've been working with Yuki to put everything together. So for today's first panel, we have three amazing people from the game investing world, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And we're just going to go through their introductions. We have a few prepared questions which we're going to go through, and at the end we've allocated quite a bit of time to take questions from the audience. So don't be shy, use the Q&A button. Without any further ado, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. Jennifer, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jennifer. So I'm actually an independent developer by day and a game investor by night. I previously exhibited with the Tentacle Zone and do recommend it. So I've been making games for 15 years, 5 years in AAA as a programmer and designer. And 10 years ago, I founded an independent studio here in the UK called Yum Yum. For 10 years, we've been making beautifully crafted and unconventional games like Tengami and Astrologaster. About a year ago, I joined, I think, the first fund that primarily invests in games by marginalized developers called Wings. We are looking for games sort of like of all genres, and the most important aspect to us is the diversity of your team. And when I say diversity, I'm talking about obviously gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Yeah, and that's why I'm.
Thanks for that, Jennifer. Spike, do you want to go next?
Yes, happy to. Hello, I'm Spike Laurie. I'm a venture director at Hiro Capital, Ian Livingstone's relatively new now Series A and B focused venture capital firm. Our focus is game studios, esports and digital sports, and primarily in game studios in Europe, funding the gap at the Series A and B level, and providing capital for all the wonderful and talented studios, creatives and developers that are out there and making games.
Thank you for that, Spike. And lastly, Elena.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elena from EG7, which is Inet Global 7. We are a Swedish holding, a family of companies featuring 2 game development studios, Toadman Interactive and Antimatter Games, a publisher, Sold Out, a creative advertising agency, Petrol, in Los Angeles, and last but not least, our recent acquisition, Big Blue Bubble, one of the most successful mobile game developers in the world, with their most charming games, Mazing and Monsters. And what we're building is basically a family of companies, an ecosystem that spans the entire value chain of gaming business, which means game development, game publishing, game marketing, and other game development related services.
That's all really interesting, and I absolutely love the fact that everybody here has a slightly different focus. But I think over the past several months now, we have gone into several months instead of a few months, right? We've been all affected by very similar things with the local lockdowns and with COVID. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about how the COVID situation has impacted the company or companies that you're representing, and whether or not, for example, you've been taking pitches. So Spike, do you want to start with that?
Yes, happy to. Certainly we have been taking pitches. I think it's a really good time to be pitching and getting out there. We've made 2 investments during this time. Polyarc, a very talented studio that made the beautiful game Moss for VR. And we closed that investment during the COVID period, and also another investment in FitXR, which is a virtual reality fitness platform, which has been doing very, very well, and in particular during this time has continued to do well, as you can imagine. I think it's a really interesting question because often within investment circles, one of the first questions I ask fellow investors is, would you invest in a company that you had never met face to face? And that's a really, honestly, a hard one to answer. Primarily, you're investing in teams and the people. And the games industry is a relatively small industry. You know most of the people in the industry. So that's kind of all right if you have existing relationships. But if you don't, I think it's a little bit, it does slow things down a little bit if you aren't able to meet face-to-face the teams, the people that you're investing in, because ultimately that's what you're investing in, people and a team. I don't know if Ellen or Jennifer, you would agree with that or not.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, IPs and games are absolutely important, of course, but what's more important is the team and culture. And we've seen, well, let's say less ambitious product being made great by amazing teams, and we have seen great products destroyed by not so great teams. So I'm 100% on your side.
So I'm gonna slightly disagree. So at Wings, Wings primarily invests in game projects, and because we are looking so we are basically only accepting pitches from diverse teams, games that are being made by marginalized developers. There's a high possibility that, if you are in that group, you will not have access to sort of like attending like in real, like in-person meetings. So it's very likely that we and, nobody who's on the advisory board for Wings has ever met these people. And so what we are primarily looking at is, how strong is the game concept? What is the market situation? And how much can we guess, that these people, are going to deliver? But with Wings, I have to say, because a lot of the people who are pitching to us are first-time game developers, or game developers with limited experience. Like, we are always more sort of like on the, I guess, we wanna nurture, and so even sometimes if we are not 100% sure, we say, okay, we are going to, provide mentorship to this team and our expertise. And we think, with our combined expertise and the mentorship that we will provide, even an inexperienced team that hasn't proven themselves will be able to do it. And so, I mean, I absolutely agree that we are investing in teams, but I think like what we are looking for compared to other investment funds is slightly different, because we want to, there's a lot of unconscious bias in investment, as we know. Like, if you look at the numbers, obviously men have a much easier chance to get an investment into their companies as well as their projects. And so at Wings, we are very conscious, sort of like how the investment, not just the investment system, but how like the system or the world that we live in is sort of like skewed against, marginalized people. And because of that, I think we have to take more risks than what other investment funds would do. And, this comes onto a second point. So something that I experience and see myself a lot in the game industry is that sort of like as a man, like, you know, like I'm speaking sort of like, you know, a little bit humorously, but, you know, like men tend to fail upwards. Whereas whereas in the game industry, you know, if you're from a marginalized background, you only ever get the one chance. And with Wings, we want to make sure that marginalized developers, you know, get more than one chance. And I don't mean, you know, than 2 chances, because, you know, like some teams need like 3, 4, 5 chances until they have that big breakthrough. And we really want to be part of that pipeline and ecosystem that uplifts developers, so that we, you know, that we do find these success stories.
That's very well put, Jennifer. And something that that I wanted us actually to talk a bit about was how has the online how has online pitching worked for everybody in terms of the past 6 months or so. And I was wondering if you could start, Jennifer, and then Elena. It'd be great to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, so maybe just to go back to the first question, I get a little bit sidetracked. So Wings was set up from the first day to be a purely virtual organization. So Wings doesn't even have, I mean, I know that there's some kind of, but we don't meet in the office, right? So like we, for example, have an advisory board that's at the moment, I think, made up of 8 people, 8 women from 3 different continents. And our 2 co-founders, Audrey Prince and Peter Henriksen, they are based, for example, in, you know, in Scandinavia. We have advisors that we work with in Australia. We work with the east coast of the United States. We work with you know, a number of advisors in Europe. So it was very important for Wings that we sort of like are very, you know, agile and lean and international from the get-go. And so as such, we throughout the whole pandemic, and continuously we meet, the advisory board that I'm a part of meets every 2 weeks. And we have been evaluating, and I don't even know the number now, like so many pitches, you know, in these, like just like this year. And we are constantly going back to teams that we are interested in, you know, making offers, like, you know, digging deeper to see, you know, like who we can invest in. And so the way that Wings works is we have a website. It's just called wingsfunds.me, and there's an application form, and you submit all of the information through this form, and it just goes into, you know, like a Google sheet, and all of the advisors look at the pitches that are submitted, and then every 2 weeks we meet to discuss pitches.
Cool, thanks for that, Elena. How has COVID been for you and all of the online activity that we were more or less forced to start?
Oh, that was rather interesting, guys, because we're all scattered across not just Europe but the globe. Because I am based in Moscow, our CEO is trapped in Stockholm, our operating officer is in London, and I must say that we haven't only managed to complete an acquisition, to complete an investment, we completed even an acquisition in COVID time. So we acquired like a full-grown company, and that was like fully online, we couldn't travel. And they were based in Canada, and you can imagine how much back and forth video communication was involved. So of course we couldn't visit, of course we were not able to do like face-to-face, which is always the best. But I must say, to continue Spike's thought about the teams, when you feel the vibe and when you feel like you actually fit together, it doesn't really matter how you meet the company or the team. Because although I do hate, can you see my screen and can you hear me okay? Phrases, and although I have developed some bizarre wrinkles because of like this awkward facial expressions that you have to make in video to make it sound more friendly and realistic, but also I must say that I didn't see much trouble with this, because although COVID definitely affected everybody in a negative way in terms of communication, but it also brought some positive aspects. Like, for example, everybody suddenly became available, because no vacations, no like, you know, unexpected troubles, nothing. Everybody is right there, sitting in their homes with their cats and kids and wives and all this stuff, and everybody is keen for a discussion because people felt so deprived of interaction that even like this Zoom conversation for business seemed to be desired and very welcome. So I must say that Zoom acquisition is definitely a case, but again, the team won. The team's uniqueness, the team's you know, absolute awesomeness, it won us just like by the screen. So we didn't need, you know, like face to face to recognize that they're professionals, that they do share our values, they do realize that, you know, they're always hungry, they're always eager to, you know, do more and more. And that was, I think, the biggest factor in our decision making. So Zoom investments and Zoom acquisitions for the win.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that, Elena. Spike, what about you? How has getting pitches online been for you?
Look, like I said, I think it's a really good way to meet a lot of people very quickly, where you're not constrained by travel or being in, you know, the lobby together of a particular event, or and it's also a great equalizer as well. You know, what used to be very expensive to travel to E3 or to Gamescom or to these or GDC or these events, for a lot of developers, they're able to save there and to you know, to still meet investors or to still meet businesses over Zoom. Now the flip side to that is I think, I hope it's not just me, but I think we're all feeling a little bit zoomed out at the moment. It requires your attention. It requires, you know, I kind of want to go back to phone calls in some respects, because it's sort of, it's not the best of both worlds. It's a quicker, it's an easier path to communication, but there's nuance that lacks. There's body language. There is, you know, it's very business right from the beginning. There's only so many times you can listen to someone or ask someone or, you know, be listened to talking about coronavirus and how it's been for them in their business. And I think that's a shame. I took part in a really cool event last week, which was a panel discussion with some VR businesses in virtual reality. So I had my Quest headset on. My avatar was in a digital auditorium, and there was an audience of 30 people with their avatar, with their headsets on, sitting in the virtual auditorium. And right there, the difference was super clear. Doom, who is the founder of Live, one of the portfolios we're invested in, when he was presenting on stage, he stood up on stage and he made the hand signals and said, "This is what we're working on." Or when he came into the lobby, we high-fived. Or when afterwards during the networking session, the audio was spatial. So I could go and speak to, you know, Tepe or other people from other funds, and then we could have a conversation. I could hear the murmur of other conversations in the background. I could hear something, a word being said. I could go and jump in. And so I think you've really got to be careful that it's a more, you know, we're moving to this great sanitization of society in general, which is, you know, difficult in general. Zoom adds another layer of that. And we've got to be careful because there is a magic. There is something to being in a room with someone or overhearing a discussion, someone saying, "Hey, I know that guy, I'm working with that, we're working on something similar." And so I think we've got to be careful of this line between the sterility, the sanitization of these Zoom calls and panels and discussions versus the nuance and the magic and the je ne sais quoi of face-to-face meetings and face-to-face kind of I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting, and I'm really happy as sharing this to get all of these different perspectives. Something that I've noticed, for example, that I do a lot more of is like I actually bring my hands up to the camera in order to gesticulate, and that's helped a bit. But yeah, you know, there's definitely a case that that having everything be online kind of like takes away the moments of serendipity, just as there's an equal case to be made that bringing everything online really levels the playing field and gives a lot more people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. You know, every year there's a lot of talk about people who can't go to GDC or who can't go to E3 because they're in the US and the visa system isn't necessarily something that a lot of people can go through. But looking forward, I am curious what the three of you think about how the games industry is going to look like in something like 6 to 12 months, and how your companies have planned for that. So Elena, I was wondering if you could start us on this.
This is actually something that we debate about with my colleagues. I must say that, well, obviously COVID has spiked gaming revenues because everybody was in lockdown and everybody was playing games, of course. Console sales, game sales, everything went up. And of course, some companies went head in the clouds about it. And I must say that in financial picture that I have seen, COVID has become a foundation of making this looking graphs of revenues and EBITDAs and all this stuff. And that is not too great, because I think that COVID is more like a precedent. You shouldn't like use it as a base for any sort of calculations or predictions, because we have no idea what's going to happen. And I think it's fair to be honest about that we do not know what happens next, because when people talk a lot about second wave, we don't know what's going to happen. People say a lot about restriction going off, which also might happen. But we also thought that maybe when the lockdown is out, people will be so sick of staying like inside that they're not going to play like ever. They're just going to attend every single party and every single social gathering that they're able to lay their hands on. So it's really hard to predict. What can I say is that people are always going to play. We have loyal audiences, let's say, who consider gaming as a part of their lifestyle. There always will be cautious gamers who just like gonna try something new. A whole plus of casual game players and hyper casual game players. So I don't think coronavirus gonna make some grand changes in the industry. I think that it's gonna be more like evolution rather than revolution. So I wouldn't say we shall expect something bizarre anytime soon.
Cool, thanks for that. What about you, Spike? How's the next 6 to 12 months looking for you?
I wish I knew, Chris. I think, one of my favorite descriptions of the last 4 months in this sort of the corona situation has been the great accelerator. We have seen sort of businesses that were already doing well on the right track take advantage and really accelerate their business and really accelerate what they're doing. And on the flip side, we've seen businesses that were on the ropes start to fail, and when they do fail, they have to fail very, very fast. And here in the UK, we've had a very generous furlough scheme from the government, and now that furlough is unwinding. We are unfortunately seeing a huge number of layoffs. And I think the games industry felt it was a little bit impervious to that because of the overall numbers, being 40% up, the way that the games are going. And actually just yesterday, it was really difficult to see that, Big Fish Games had laid off 250 people, and there are game studios that are starting to lay people off. So as that government money unwinds. So I think, we're seeing that acceleration in both ways, right? We're seeing some companies that were doing good really taking advantage, and others that were struggling having to fail very, very fast. And that creates a lot of uncertainty. So difficult to say. I don't know. I think this acceleration is going to continue, and I think we're just really at the beginning of this. And that unfortunately means, some really tough situation for a lot of very talented people, perhaps.
Thanks for that, Spike. Jennifer, what about you? You're still muted. There we go.
Sort of like, jumping off what Spike said earlier about this sort of like Zoom fatigue. I think that the online tools that we are going to use will get more and more sophisticated to facilitate networking conferences, but also I think how we reach out to the consumer. I don't know how many people are aware, but Gamescom had basically a virtual indie section last week, and it's basically like a massive multiplayer online game in which you're going through online booths that are sort of like for each like individual indie game. that was in that arena, but it had, chat functionalities, like you could talk to other attendees, other visitors of the booth. You could talk to the developers if they were there. You got like all of the information that you would get if you had attended Gamescom in person. I think even though it had some advantages because there were links where you could, send your booth visitors directly to your Steam page, collect all of these important wish lists. So I think that we will see over the next, 6 to 12 months, like more sophistication in terms on how we conduct business online, not just business to business, but also business to consumer. I think in terms of Wings, I don't think that there will be any changes for us. We sort of like have our plan hatched out, and sort of like, in-person meetings were never a part of that plan. So, we'll just keep going as we are.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now I just wanted to go a bit into some practical tips or thoughts for the people who are watching. And I just wanted, especially Jennifer, because you have so much experience with taking pitches online. Do you have any tips for people when they are pitching online? And I'm going to ask this of everybody, but let's start with you.
So if you're pitching to Wings, you're obviously not talking to us in person. So it's really important that your pitch deck, as much as possible, answers all of the questions that we might have. And so there are, I think, there are 3 mistakes that I see all like over and over again. And the one is that there's no sort of like key art image. There's no concept art, even just like one image that shows, this is what we are aiming for with this game. I feel like I don't want to emphasize it, and that's why I say I think like one image that shows what your goal is enough. But I know that it costs obviously money to create such a picture, but it's really, as I say, a picture says 1,000 words, and it helps a lot to sort of like instill confidence in your game concept if we see that you've already put a lot of effort into sort of like the visual identity and the final look of your game, even if your prototype is just a block out. Then the second mistake that I see is that people don't do enough market research and they don't know how to position their game. And then the pitch like falls really flat on the sort of like, this is how much it costs to make this game versus this is how much you can expect to make with this game, in the worst case, sort of like if everything goes okay, and the best case scenario. Like, for example, we had any number of people that pitched to us with a budget that they wouldn't have even recouped in the best case scenario. And so that's obviously not a good business proposition that you're making, right? So really think about what is the business proposition that you're making in your pitch. And I think number 3 is, so obviously I'm a game designer myself, and I really love, if people read my game design documents, but your pitch deck is not a game design document. So please be like very concise. Just like, what are the unique selling points? Like, what are maybe the cool game design aspects of your game? But don't you don't need to go into into as much detail of the design as you think. Like, really keep it short and concise. Maybe 3 to 5 slides, and just focus on like what is really cool and special and unique about your game.
Thanks for that. All of that was really good sound advice. Elena, what are your thoughts on this? I've in the meantime, I've also posted all of our Twitter handles in chat if people want to keep up with you on Twitter.
Cool. So yeah, online pitches. I think my biggest advice strategically is to consider it as a date. It's not about just you trying to show your best side to an investor or like a potential buyer of the company. It's always 2 ways around. Keep in mind that it's also like your best interest. Keep in mind how these people treat you, how they behave, what kind of question they ask, and just ask yourself, are you going to be comfortable working with these people in long term? Because any kind of investment or an acquisition is a very long-term deal. And you must make sure that you're going to be comfortable with these people, that they do share your best interest, that you have the same values, the same ideas of this partnership or whatsoever. So don't just try to, like to show off your best sides. Pay attention, ask questions, probe, and consider it a mutual deal. So that's, you're not here like to sell something. You're here to evaluate the opportunity, and of course, try not to make presentation of 150 slides, because I've seen even more. And when they say like, "Can you see my screen?" and then you see like in this left corner it says like 173, and you go, "God forbid!" And yeah, don't do that. Try to keep it simple, to give like the best perception of it.
Cool, thanks. I love seeing everybody smile when you mentioned the 173 slide presentation.
I think we've all been affected by this at some point.
Love it. More slides, the better. I can't get enough.
What about you, Spike?
I would say, I think Elena's really hit the nail on the head there. You're building a relationship, and just, right from the beginning, it's about that relationship. So, one of the important things that we look for, and again, every company's different, all the stage is different, every investor has a different taste. This is an art. This is not a science, but it is about building that relationship right from the off. One of the things that we look at is, how teachable is a team. No investment that we've ever come across, or I think will come across, is perfect. There's just doesn't exist. And so listening to both sides, listening to each other, looking at where there can be improvement or changes, those aren't weak. We don't see those as weaknesses. We see those as opportunities to help a business grow. And so I would really implore people, when they're approaching an investor, to do so with an openness, and it's a two-way street, and that, I think, is how you get the most out of finding investment. You're looking for a partner. You're looking for someone who's going to sit on your board. You're looking for someone who's going to help you grow, scale, open their contact book, open their network, help identify and fix weaknesses, and help magnify strengths. And so right from the off, if you can go in with that mindset, you're really going to set yourself up for success.
That's a good mind to be in. And yeah, I think a really important takeaway is that it's about more than just money. It's also about contact. It's also about experience. Steve at the beginning today talked a lot about having access to some really good advisors as they started Mediatonic. So yeah, I think some really good stuff there. We have some questions that I'd like us to go through. So one from Lewis, and I think they mentioned this in regards to what Jennifer was saying. How can you realistically forecast how much money your game could make? And Jennifer, if you take this question, and then if anybody else wants to join the conversation, by all means, please do.
So it's obviously incredibly difficult to do that, and so basically what I would suggest so currently what is a very popular, there are two popular methods. And one is you make a list of what you think your competitors are, and don't just make like your top 3 competitors. I would try, as many competitors that you can find. And you are then going on Steam Spy, and you have a look at how many copies these games have sold. And by doing that, you can probably come up with sort of like a worst case scenario, sort of like a normal scenario, what are these games selling on average, and then like a best case scenario. And that's what you can, that's one way of doing it. And the other is sort of like a method, I think an independent developer called Jake Burkett sort of like came up with this, and it has been also like definitely search YouTube for Ryan Clark from Brace Yourself Games. Like he talks a lot how independent developers can do sales forecasts. And the other method is, I think it's called the Box-Leitner number. And basically what you do is, again, you make a list of your competitors, and you go on Steam and you look at how many ratings and over what time, these ratings have been accumulated. And based on the number of ratings, I don't know what the current Boxleitner number is, but again, if you search for Jake Burkett, I think he's Grey Alien Games on Twitter, or Ryan Clark from Brace Yourself Games, like it will come up pretty quickly. And so you multiply the number of these ratings by this, this magic number. And the way that independent developers came up with this number is by basically, we compared, and I also submitted data for my game, so that counters of independent developers have submitted data to make that work. And submitted data over, this is how many ratings my game has, and this is how many copies it has actually sold. And so I think doing both of these methods, you will come to a sort of pretty good idea of what you can expect. But, just to say up front, because there's, nobody gives you actual sales data. You always have to make your best, the most educated guesstimate that you can do when doing a sales forecast.
Well, thanks for that. Actually, James Brooksby typed in the Q&A. So what they recommend is multiplying your reviews over a year by about, the reviews over a year by about 65. However, it can be any number between 30 to 150. And then somebody in chat mentioned it can be between 35 and 120. The number of Steam reviews, the box letter factor. And then we have...
So I think basically what happened is because, I don't know exactly when, but I think a year or two, or maybe a little bit longer ago, Steam changed how they prompt users to leave ratings. Yep. And because of that change, more users are leaving ratings. And so this number has shifted. And this is why it's important to look at, when, this game that you're comparing yourself to, what year has it been released? Because this, I don't know if it's Boxleitner or Boxleitner number, is, it changed basically over the course of that time. Unfortunately, I don't have it. Maybe somebody has a link to Jake's blog post where all of that is explained.
Yeah, I think somebody posted a link to that from a link to an article from Simon Carlos. Spike and Elena, what do you think about this in terms of estimating numbers? Have you seen some good estimations, and do you have any tips?
Look, I think we all know that the games industry can be quite a hit-driven industry. We've just seen a great hit recently, Fall Guys, for example. Fortnite, that's the poster boy of video games right now. We know that was a hit and completely, not engineered. So, I see a lot of presentations. I see a lot of hockey stick graphs. I love a hockey stick graph more than anyone else. And please, don't let that dissuade you. But again, it comes back to have that realistic conversation. We know as an investor in video games that we're not investing in a game because it's going to be, this is the hit, this is going to return the fund, this is the one. We're investing in a team. We know that if we give that team, which has the right ideas and can react to market conditions, the optimal environment for success, then that success can come and those hits can spring up. 5 years ago, Battle Royale was not on anyone's radar. If you look at the journey of Battle Royale from an Arma 3 mod to DayZ to PUBG to Fortnite, there have been a lot of iterations of that game mode before it became the paradigm that it is today in the industry. And so I think any smart investor understands that, wants to create the conditions for success for you to have that hit. But I'm certainly not looking at a hockey stick graph and saying, cool, revenue is going to be this in 3 years. I'll take 2. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that. Elena?
Yeah, totally agree with you, Spike. And hockey sticks, yeah, it's been a great trend. To be honest, I'm backing Jennifer on this educated guesstimate thing, and on Steam Plus, of course. As for me, when I look at the game and trying to predict its commercial success, I look not at numbers, well, of course at numbers as well, but mostly I look at some elements of the game that that have brought success to previous titles. And as you can see, of course, everything right now is about multiplayer, everything right now is about competitive elements, and of course, having these elements can already ensure part of this commercial success in the future. And of course, you look at the similar games, you look at similar art direction, you look at the similar gameplay, and of course, it's more like about comparison. I don't remember who of the artists said that good artists copy and great artists steal, but let's call it to be inspired by
Picasso,
other games. Picasso, exactly. So he couldn't be mistaken, right? So I think that's comparison with other titles is your biggest ally on predicting commercial success.
Thank you for that.
And another thing that belongs to that, and again, I'm speaking primarily to independent developers. I think we all know that marketing is hard. And somebody mentioned Simon Carlos, and everybody should sign up to his newsletter for sure. And also, when looking at the sort of like the sort of like, like how profitable is the game going to be? It's obviously not just the numbers. It's also, do you maybe have an interesting marketing strategy or, some kind of hook? And actually this marketing, maybe I should have said that earlier, I see all the time that people underestimate in their pitch decks, like how much money they will need for marketing to make a dent, right? I mean, Fall Guys was mentioned. Obviously, Fall Guys is a game. If you look at the gift, it sells itself. However, Fall Guys did not have a marketing budget of £15,000, right? Like, I don't know what the exact budget is, but it will be a very high marketing budget. And so, in the road to market, it's, there's also something made, it's obviously difficult to gauge, but like, how do you get the most marketing bang for your buck? And I mean, it's totally okay to say my marketing strategy is I'm going to hire this, specialist company, and this is a budget that they gave me. But I think it is important to actually go and talk to marketing and PR companies, that do primarily marketing for a game project. I'm not talking about, company marketing, and how much is that going to cost, and add that into your budget and say, this is what these guys said they would do for us. If we give them that much money. So really think about, yes, what are the potential sales numbers, but also what are you doing to make your audience know that the game that you're making exists. And so it's really these both things: market analysis and what is your road to market and marketing strategy.
I think marketing is definitely a really good point here, and that's always going to influence sales. So thank you for that point, Jennifer. Really really good advice. Just because I'm mindful of the time, I think we have maybe 15 minutes left at the moment or thereabouts. Can you type in chat to all panelists and attendees what the best way to for the participants to contact you is? I've added your Twitters, but if you would like to share emails or anything else, do type it in there. And in the meantime, we have a few more questions left. So one question from Charlie: with regards to small and or new teams working from shared spaces or even from home, are there any key points or flags you look for that have particular influence on your decisions? Who would like to take this one?
Oh, yeah, so at Wings, we don't. I think the majority of the teams that we invest in are virtual teams, that work remotely with each other. So that's totally fine.
Cool. Elena, Spike?
We're not investing at that kind of angel or seed stage, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to give guidance there.
Cool.
We're not doing it either, but I still think I do have an advice. Don't be discouraged. Of course, you're gonna hear a lot of no's, and sometimes for us who are like currently only interested in acquisitions, we see a lot of great pitches asking for investment, and we usually we usually suggest they contact a couple of our friendly VCs, and of course they hear no a lot of times, but bear in mind that you only need one yes, and don't be discouraged. Of course, you're not in the best position pitching like with this little to present to the investors, but there will be one to believe in you enough to make sure you succeed, and you need this one, and please keep going until you meet him or her.
Thank you for that. Another question, which I think is an interesting one, is from Becky. Should developers try and cater their games to what investors are looking for specifically?
No, I think that isn't the right approach. Your game needs to be fun, and ultimately it's an expression of the team that are building it. So I understand there can be a lure there of thinking, trying to guess what an investor wants and then pitching them, but I think I don't think that's a very a good way to approach it. Obviously, tweak the story and the narrative of presenting to an investor. Make sure you're positioning your ask in the right light to give yourself the best chance of success, and that goes back to all the advice that Jennifer and Elena have given so far. But with the game itself, I think you need to that needs to be devolved from the investment process.
Cool. Any other?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, don't twist yourself to make a game that you think somebody else wants, right? I mean, like, definitely do your market research and all of that, but always, like, have confidence in your creativity and have confidence that your taste is not that unusual, that nobody else wants to play a game that you think is going to be great. And, don't forget, let's say this game that you designed for somebody else gets funded, you have to work on it for the next 2 to 5 years, like depending on how fast your development cycle is. And you don't want to be sitting there and be like, oh, I'm just doing like it feels like a chore. You know what I mean? Like, it's your work and it's your creative output, and you have to be able to stick with it, through all of the ups and downs of development. And that is much easier if you're making a game that you 100% believe in. So don't twist your creativity into something that you don't believe in. Just really trust your instincts.
Thank you. Elena?
Yeah, I also believe that staying true to yourself, to your own vision, and maybe, as Spike has put it before, how did you put it, Spike? The team to be something you said that I really liked and I didn't put down. I shouldn't have trusted my 30 years old brain. About team being responsive and eager to be educated. So draw a line between of catering to investors and actually listening to advice that they give, some advice that may help you get better. But of course, stay true to yourself, stay true to your vision, and yeah, you just need to find a person who shares your views and ideas, and that's it.
Cool. Thank you for that. So another question that's about small teams is, what's the best advice you could give a small studio with their first MVP looking for investment? The studio is at an early stage, but they already have one full-time employee and contractors, but they're looking to have more full-time staff eventually.
So if you're looking for project-based funding, if you have an MVP that you think sufficiently sells the idea of your game, then I would totally go to, start pitching it to get that project investment. And, really, like in project investment, the most important thing is the prototype / vertical slice, / MVP, plus sort of like you being able to sell the vision of where that's going. And it doesn't really matter if it's just like, like a 1-person studio or 2-person studio. There are a lot of independent, let's call them indie publishers that are exactly looking for these sort of like small teams to invest in. if they have a convincing project. And so one thing that I want to caution a little bit there, and it's maybe good to get opinions sort of like of from other developer friends on that, is it can sometimes be a little bit hard to judge when is your prototype ready to be shown to other people. And that's like a very case-by-case basis, but I'm just like cautioning this, and I'm saying that it's good to also get other people's feedback on that, is because we have received, it happens like regularly enough that I want to mention it, but you can see, people have a great concept, and probably it's going to be cool, but the prototype just really doesn't show sort of like the gameplay well enough to support the paper pitch. That's to be said, it's also okay to repitch your game like 6 months later, 12 months later, or even 3 months. I think there were people that repitched after 3 months, after they had listened to our feedback and sort of like done more work on the prototype, and then 3 months later or 6 months later, the prototype had sufficiently advanced that we could say, yeah, okay, we can see, like, this convinces us that you'll be able to deliver a full-scale game on this, and we are going to invest now.
Really good thoughts there. Spike and Elena, anything else to add?
Going back to the point Jennifer just ended with there about, not being scared of repitching. Another investor friend of mine put it really succinctly. He said, you got to be able to take no like a champ. And that's true. And it comes back to that building a relationship, that there's lots of startups that I've looked at, or businesses that I've looked at, that weren't right at the time. And the feedback that we give at Hiro is quite candid, and sometimes some people don't like it, but it's with their best interests at heart, because, we succeed together. And therefore there's nothing I would like more than someone I've spoken to 6 months ago or 12 months ago coming back to me and saying, Spike, look, you told me these 3 things. This is the trajectory we're on. We've just had this many more users. Our engagement's gone up by 5%. We're making a deal with company X. There's nothing I would love to hear more than that, and say, right, let's look at it again, and let's see how we can work together on this. So really, I think, be able to take no like a champ, and again, it comes back to that, it's a relationship. And just because an investor has said no to you, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't go back, and the investor, if they're worth their salt, would welcome that, and would love to pick up the phone again and to find out how you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Elena?
I'd actually like to elaborate on this togetherness that Spike and Jennifer have mentioned. I think the best aspect of our industry is how easy and how eagerly we do the knowledge sharing. And there's so many opportunities to obtain some mentorship and some, really scientifically backed up advice in the industry, that I think my biggest advice will be, do not be shy to reach out to, let's say, successful game developers, and just maybe ask them about their opinion. Just ask them to have a couple of minutes of their precious time to go through your pitch or your concept or whatsoever, and just hear their thoughts. Because since I have done this before, they've also most likely have been in your position, sometimes having just a concept and like nothing else in hands, basically being one developer and like a couple of contractors, and they've been through it. They were eager to help. We're always eager to share some knowledge. We're always happy to help somebody else succeed, because the more the merrier. And this is what I love the best about our industry. So I think since everybody knows each other, like this theory of 6 handshake will definitely lead you to somebody who will be, I don't know, open to take an eye on your pitch, on your concept, and just hear their thoughts. The more feedback you have before actually facing an investor, the more confident you will feel, and the better you'll be able to defend your pitch. So just ask.
Cool. No, that's all really good advice. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end with one question, and then if folks want to speak to you, or generally as I said, I have posted the Twitters, and thank you for taking the time to add your emails to the chat as well. So my last question is, are there any initiatives you're involved with that you would like more studios to be aware of?
Let me just take the chance to share the wonderful initiatives that our lovely colleagues from Sold Out are supporting. You see, I think UK is the most superior in terms of charities and non-commercial initiatives in gaming business. One of them I want to feature particularly, which is called Safe in Our World. It's an association of helping people with mental health issues in gaming. And this is basically the place where you can find some help or offer some help. And second is GameSet, which is umbrella for smaller charities, again, helping within with the video games industry. And I think they specialize on disadvantaged and disabled children and youth. So I think the more we pay attention to this, the more we talk about it, the safer and better our world will be. And again, game development industry is an incredibly safe space. It welcomes everyone, and we shall translate this more and more into the society. So if you have a chance, please take a look. And I also want to take a moment to appreciate what Mediatonic has did with their charity initiative with the costume. I think it's wonderful. It was fun. It was incredibly useful. And I think that transforming the world through a game, through like playing together, bringing everybody together is the most amazing thing we can produce for the world itself.
Thank you, Elena. Spike, Jennifer?
Yeah, I mean, not 100%, maybe I've misunderstood the question. I think there's fantastic games charities out there, special effect games, etc. I'm going to keep it a little bit more focused on a commercial opportunity initiative for the audience here, as I think for a lot of game studios wanting to find out more. And I'm going to be a little bit self-promotional, so I apologize. But we'll be running an event on September the 29th. Called the Dark Star, which is an opportunity for any game studio, any level, to come to learn from the partners at Hiro, Ian, Luke, Cherry, Simon, about how to position themselves for venture capital investment. And we'll also have our portfolio companies, so the CEOs and founders of studios like Polyarc, FidXR, Live, talking about their journey, what they're up to, and what they've done since receiving venture capital investment. So keep your eyes peeled for that, as it may be of some interest for game studios.
Thanks for that, Spike. If you have the link, do post it in chat. Jennifer?
So I think in March, when GDC was cancelled, Wing started a fund called the GDC Relief Fund. And we had, a lot of sort of like publishers and developers support this fund. And the fund was used to sort of like reimburse, travel and hotel costs that small independent developers had incurred that couldn't be that they couldn't get back because of the situation. And a portion of that money, so we ended up raising too much money. And the remaining portion of that money went into a program called Evolve 2020, which is run by an amazing organization here in the UK called Code Coven. And so Code Coven primarily sort of like helps early stage developers, or really just people from marginalized backgrounds who want to get into game development by teaching them how to do game development. And they do, Code Coven is doing a fantastic job. And that's why we partnered with them on Evolve 2020, which is basically an accelerator / incubator for small independent teams that were impacted through, the cancellation of GDC and COVID in general. And that program is starting this month in September. I don't know the exact date, and it's going to run for 14 weeks. And it is sort of like, it gives mentorship, you know, development support. Obviously, you know, we're helping people with our network. There are milestone-based stipends, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you everyone for that. Thank you to the attendees as well as to the great panelists that we've had here today for the first panel of the day. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Spike. And we will now move on to an online platform called GatherTown for the social. Leon is going to be posting the links, and I will personally be seeing you back at 2 p.m. for the panel with game studios about understanding value as an indie game developer. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you later.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.